Well, I see a lot of people have joined us, and boy, I'll tell you, it's straight up, well, about a minute after here. So let's begin to get going here. I know we've got some other people that may join us in the process, but out of respect for those that are already here, Marlene, I know that you're driving, and excuse me, camera might be a challenge, but is there anything that you'd like to bring up or say in the process before we kind of get started here?
Well, I appreciate that, Jeff. I do just want to say I am so excited because I see Ace Mannon beginning to make an impact across the world, and that just tells me we have even more to do right here at home, and I'm excited that we're going to hear about that and some of our other products tonight for people who are new on the call, and encourage you to ask any questions before we're finished here if you have any questions that come up. And I'll just turn it back to you, Jeff.
Great, Marlene. And I was real quick turning out my TV in the background because I have a dog that likes to watch. And the minute she sees a dog on TV, then she decides it's time to fight. And so I just need to clarify, sometimes there's a lot of challenges in coming together here on these. And for Judy and I, they usually have 4 legs in this house. So welcome, everybody. Let me get going here. I know that Shalene, I believe that you're also a co-host on the line. So if you see anybody that comes in that needs to be admitted from the waiting room, if you could please do that. I don't know if Marlene can get on as they're driving. So first of all, let me just welcome everybody to this gathering. Every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time, I share just a little bit about what's on my heart with this. And sometimes I kind of have a little trouble in that I feel like it's about me a lot. And with all due respect, my story is about me. It's about me and my wife, Judy, and what brought us to the table here. I know as you come down this road, I know that as you consume these products and really embrace what we're talking about here, if you choose, you're going to have your own story. And but for Judy and I, it began over 20 years ago. And some people say, well, that's your previous story. But for she and I, this is the continuation of the same story. And over 22 years ago, I was working 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And for the most part, I used to say, working paycheck to paycheck, but that wasn't really true. I wasn't even getting to the next paycheck. But my wife, Judy, is a serious diabetic. She'd been through, at the time, 2 kidney transplants and had developed peripheral neuropathy and diabetic retinopathy. And she was losing her eyesight and couldn't feel her feet. She'd already been through several forms of cancer over the years, and one thing after another, and not to mention infection after another infection and all the immunosuppressant medications and everything. And what they were telling us over 20 years ago, that she was probably looking at 3 to 5 good years and the potential for amputation, blindness, and stroke soon to follow, or even something worse. And so that's just what they were giving us, and for Judy and I, that didn't offer what we call hope. And so, I mean, I wasn't really necessarily looking because I didn't believe there was anything out there beyond what we were being told. And that being said, I'm not being critical of our great doctors. And certainly if it wasn't for them, Judy wouldn't be here today. But that being said, we did start looking around, and, a good friend of mine who knew Judy in our situation, he came in where I was working, and he said, Jeff, I've run across something that I think might help you and Judy. And, I respected him. He was involved in infusion medicine, a medical software company, and, pharma, I don't even know how to say it, pharmacological degree, or trained in pharmaceuticals and things of that nature. He was a pharmacist by trade. But, that being said, I respected everything about him, and I just assumed he had found something out there in that big ivory tower called medicine. And he invited Judy and I out to his house and, begin to explain a little bit about this whole idea of cellular communication and how the body functions at a cell level and how to support that. And, I got to tell you something. I mean, the more he explained, hardly the less I believed, because how could something be like that? And one of my wife's, Judy's doctors, or better yet, even why hadn't I heard this on the news if it was that great? So that's kind of where I was at in the beginning with this. And this went on for about 3.5, 4 months. And I basically was asking questions and kind of poking at it, but being somewhat arrogant and rather rude about it until Ron, the guy that shared it with me, said, Jeff, if you don't believe it, that's okay. Just forget about it. But, if you want to know more, go to Dallas. They're having a big event down there and you can hear from some of the medical professionals and you can talk to some people about some of their results and you can really hear the bigger picture. And so, you know what, I told Judy, we're going to Dallas, and she thought I was crazy. We didn't have the money. And, not to mention, I couldn't take off work. I mean, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in the tire business and working as a mechanic by trade. I mean, those were our busiest days. So my boss just said I couldn't take off. And I said, you know what, I've got to go. And we left. And, so that's what we did. And I drove to Dallas, and I told Judy we'd sleep in the back end of her truck if we had to, but I wanted to know if what they're telling me was the truth. And I guess we're in a very unique time frame today, because next weekend, not the next couple of days, but a week from this coming weekend, there's a major event in Dallas, and they'll be talking about the truth that I'm sharing with you right now to some degree. But a lot of this is stuff that took many, many years of digging to find the actual truth here. So that's where I began. And on that weekend that we went to Dallas, I ended up on a Saturday morning and I snuck into a closed door session for licensed medical doctors only. And that's another story and how I got in there, but I did. And I had the honor to listen to a gentleman who at the time was one of the chief immunologists with the National Institutes of Health. Now, I don't know how to explain everything to all of you, but I know this: what that man said that day, I knew was true. And at that point, I wasn't as much excited as I was almost angry about this. How could there be something that would make this level of a difference, that could be this simple and this safe, and nobody was telling us about us? It wasn't coming through traditional sources. And so that's just right there where I stopped in my tracks. I walked out of that room that day and I said, I'm going to take this to the world. It almost had me infuriated over it. And so I left there that day on October 17th of 98. And a few weeks later, on the 14th of November, 1998, I quit my job after 26 years. And I began to look into this and tell people, you got to look at this. And for the most part, I couldn't tell them anything, but I encouraged them at least to look. And the things that I encouraged them to look at was nothing compared to what we have today. I mean, we've got information all the way published up into the Library of Congress and the research that was ultimately, that came from this original discovery back in the early 80s. So that's what went on. And over the course of 2 years, I learned just enough to look in the mirror and go, you know what, this is true. And you don't need to know all this. Just know this: if you swallow it, it works. And so that's where I began. And I'm not here to share the rest of that story with you, but I can promise you, within a few years, Judy and I were both in places we'd never dreamed of. Judy, over the course of about 10 days, could feel her feet. In about 5 weeks, she was having such incredible impact that they cut her blood, her insulin, by as much as 70%. I'm not here to make a medical claim because I don't know all the details that I'm going to cover tonight, but I know this: that made a difference, and that told me a lot. And over the course of about 4 months, she reduced close to half of those $1,700 worth of medications, and in 2 years was off of 100% of them completely. So that's our story. It is the truth. And I've had some people even challenge that could even be possible. Well, that's exactly what I said when somebody was beginning to tell me about this. And for 4 months, that's what held me back. How could it be possible? So that's why I'm here tonight. And that's why I'm going to share what I share. And I do it, maybe for me, most part, every Wednesday night, because I just want to get people to understand some basic, simple stuff. I don't get into all the details. I don't talk science in the sense of ingredients or any of that. I just, from a mechanic standpoint, I know the human body is somewhat of a machine, and it's got to have certain things to allow it to run on a regular basis. I refer to that as our daily bread. So when I get into this, and let me get going here to make sure everything's going to work right. Marlene, you got to grab me if something's not working, and Shalene, you look at it too. So let's see here. Can you see that okay?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. So when I get into sharing this, first of all, let me get right to it. The Hope Movement, powered by Alivea, is a social business platform. It is not some network marketing company, and in fact, it is not based as a direct sell company. It is somewhat of an affiliate-based company. It does fall somewhat into the classification of direct sell, depending on how you look at it. But we provide many avenues of opportunity depending on what you might see here. Whether you want to look at the big picture, you want to look at it in a small way, or you just want to be a customer, that's okay. Our movement is set up that every single time you purchase one product or more, each product individually supports a child 1-for-1. Meaning if you buy 2 products, that's 2 children, 3 products, 3 children. And so every product supports a child 1-for-1. Social business platform, by that I mean we are the collaboration of 2 worldwide ministries, Manna Relief Ministries and Nations Changers Ministry Network, which is a worldwide ministry. And those 2 mission networks basically came together and collaborated to form a for-profit company referred to as Alivea, which is the company that delivers these products. And every single product that is given to this movement, every ingredient, should I say, is gifted to this movement simply because we serve children. And we serve children literally in orphanages around the world. You know, over the course of the last 22 to 25 years, Manna Relief Ministries has served over 250,000 children in over 90 orphanages in over 80 countries worldwide. So I can tell you something, you know, when we talk about making a difference in people's lives, well, we have a long track record. Even though this movement began just barely a year ago here in a few weeks, it has in fact been growing for close to 25 years now. So that's who we are as a movement. That's who we are as a company. And we just simply invite you to be a fellow helper of the truth that we share and to help us begin to lean this forward. Why? Because there's over 6 million children every single year that die simply because they don't have the nutrients in the foods that they eat to protect their little bodies from things such as viruses and toxins and bacteria, things that for the most part kids have been very able to defend for years, except in some of these impoverished areas. And while the feeding programs have overcome starvation, we know the food is very benign of the active ingredients, and that's referred to as malnutrition. And our goal is to eradicate malnutrition with children around the world. Now, I probably shouldn't use the term eradicate because that is, in fact, a claim. But I can promise you this, we're going to make an impact that nobody else has or could, because nobody with the amount of money at any level could sustain what it's going to take to continually support these children day 1, day 2, and day 3, and from now on. So we are a sustainable funding source to serve children, and we're being adopted by multiple ministries worldwide, ministries that actually work worldwide, that see us as a funding mechanism to help support their ministries, as well as help support what we're doing because of the mission to serve children. You know, the purest form of religion is simply to serve the widows and our orphans, and that's exactly where we come in. So that's who we are as a company. That's who we are as a movement. When we talk about the problem we all face, first of all, it's not new. You know, over the past 40 years in North America alone, we've lost over 30% of our immune system function, and it continues to decline at the rate of around 3% plus per year. And over these last 40 years, you know, immunodeficiency has become the #1 cause of disease, disability, and death in the world. I mean, once your immune system gets compromised to the point that your body can't protect itself against, you know, things such as viruses and toxins, it can't defend and restore and all those kinds of things that it's designed to do. You know, that's really where we're at today. We're getting sicker, easier, we're slower to recover. And that's just, you know, what we're experiencing. Look around right now, even this virus we're facing, which is very serious, in a lot of ways is more serious simply because our bodies have broken down to the point that, well, what we said over 20 years ago, that in 10 to 20 years, people could actually be affected by a common cold. Now, I'm not saying that's what the COVID is. I'm not even referring to it being a common cold. And there's a lot of controversy on what it is and where it came from, but we're not going to get into that. We just know that, you know, many people are dealing with all kinds of problems today. And when we talk about the leading causes of death, you know, heart disease over 600,000, cancer right there at the same level, sometimes a little ahead of heart disease, sometimes a little behind it. Pulmonary disorders and strokes and Alzheimer's, again, well over 100,000 people every year, not to mention diabetes, influenzas, and pneumonias and things, you know, that really affect so many people. And today we see, you know, many people dealing with that, you know, at even, you know, we talk epidemic rates, but literally it's around the world. So, and at the root of most of these problems we see right here is something called malnutrition. A lot of times it's found to be diet deficiencies that are causing our bodies to break down. And we're just unable to deal with some of these factors that lead to what we see today. So what do? We go in to get some help and start, doing something about this. But when we look at what's going on in the medical system today, again, this isn't being critical of our great medical doctors. This is in fact praising them for what I believe they have to deal with, because it is almost like a pressure cooker and it's about to go off. So when we think about the problems within the system, there's over 100,000 people every single year that die taking a properly prescribed pharmaceutical medication that does not include overdoses or interactions or misprescribed drugs or anything like that. You do exactly what you are instructed to do, and for whatever reason, it could cost you your life. And so that's what we see every year, over 100,000 people, not to mention, infections in the hospital that people didn't have till they got there, other medical mistakes, unnecessary surgeries and other errors, over 100,000. But, when you look at that in combined with the numbers of outpatient, which is about the same categorically, you combine that together, that's over 420,000 people every single year that lose their life, literally going into the system, trying to deal with some of these other problems. And so if you put all that together against heart disease and cancer, you now see that being treated by the medical system is now leading the third leading cause of death. And I had a guy stand up at a meeting one time and said, "Sound like you're criticizing our great doctors." And I said, "You know what? This is not my statistics. This is coming straight from the Journal of the American Medical Association, July 26 of 2000, volume 284. I didn't write this. I'm just repeating it. And I find it appalling also, because I know this, every one of Judy's incredible medical doctors that have taken care of her, I can promise you, we believe they were virtually God sent to us. So, it's not about being critical of the individual. Look at the system is what I'm saying. Step back, as Gestalt said, and look at the picture here and begin to look at the facts. So when you look at everything going on here today and we see what people are trying to accomplish, the miracle is really inside your body. And we all know the body heals itself, but your body is designed to keep you healthy. It's got a powerful defense system that is constantly rebuilding and repairing and restoring itself. It protects the body against all kinds of things, that potentially can get in and damage the body. Our immune system is our front line of defense. We have the innate and adaptive immune system. It's like the alarm system that goes off, sending a signal to something to call action, to do something about that. And that's all carried out through something called cellular communication. Now, when I say cellular communication, let me stop here just a quick second, because the fact is, when it comes to cellular communication, there's been 7 Nobel Prizes in medicine and physiology for even alluding to what I just said there. So when I get into this next part of the introduction is really the discovery of certainly the last century and being looked at as one of the greatest beginning technologies and discoveries as we go into the 21st century. We know about aloe vera. It's the cornerstone of ancient medicine in every culture around the world. It's mentioned over 5 times in the Bible. Alexander the Great carried it into battle in case his soldiers got wounded, because it assists the body in helping coagulate and stop bleeding, where wounds are concerned. And we now know why scientifically. And Paracelsus said that everything man needs to sustain good health is provided by God in nature. It's the job of science to find that. So when we begin to look into this, it's an aha moment, I believe, of almost divine, intervention. And so that's what I begin to see as I begin to peel back the layers here. So when you look at this discovery that was actually made in 1981, and they went into certain trials and research to kind of more perfect it and identify it. But in 1985, by that time, they knew that it was a discovery of something called ace-mannan. It was a long polysaccharide, which I can't repeat all the science on that, but similar to a pearl necklace. And there were big pearls and small pearls and medium-sized pearls. But each size actually determined what it actually did in the human body. And when I talk about ace-mannan, and I talk about glycans or saccharides or things like that, or sugar, carbohydrate, whatever you might want to call it. And that's where it stopped me in my tracks. Because when I started hearing sugar, I knew that my wife, Judy, certainly had a problem dealing with sugar. So don't lose me. Stay with me on this, because again, it's ironic to think that, missing sugar can cause this kind of problem in the body. In fact, that's what science thought. They almost literally ridiculed this. And they virtually, to the point where at one point when they began to understand that it was true, they certainly rejected it because they saw the potential of what it could do. Today, it's slowly becoming overwhelmingly accepted. By that, I mean it's filtering out. People are beginning to know about it. And so if you're hearing about it for the first time, I would consider that a godsend. So when I look at this, we now know, first of all, ace-mannan is the most researched molecule in nature. Research has shown ace-mannan provides three major mechanisms in immune support. The structure and function of all cells, meaning that it actually allows cells to build structures that allow it to function and communicate at the cell level, which activates something called the macrophage. The larger fractions actually stay in the gut. They feed good, healthy bacteria. And so when asked the mechanism of action in the medical side of things and what this actually provided, the answer was it activates the macrophage. And to immunology, that means everything to allowing your body to go to work where God designed it. So, when we refer to that, just know that is everything when it comes to the body keeping itself healthy. When we look at these small fractions, we know that they're actually building these structures, and without exception, almost without, when two or more cells interact, in a specific way, cell surface carbohydrates will be involved. Because like this diagram shows, it shows these funny, looks like radio signal antennas off the surface of every single cell. When we look at a little bigger picture of this, we call it the sweet language of life. So these structures allow our bodies to communicate things such as nourish me and repair me and destroy me and protect me. It's how the immune system and the cells and other cells throughout the body actually communicate with each other. And these structures are referred to as glycoproteins. Glyco, again, a Greek word meaning sugar or sweet, attached to protein molecules. So when you look at that, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, March 23rd, 2001, refers to this. When we look at communication in the English language, we see that there's a long line, a short line, a big curve, and a small curve. And those four raw materials make up 26 letters that allow us to create words and sentences. And that's how you and I communicate. Well, the human body communicates biochemically using 8 particular fractions or sugars that are found in this molecular chain called ace-mannan that allow the body to build these unique structures that allow it to communicate biochemically from cell to cell and also back to immune function. So that's how the body does that. Here's an example of a cell that the body is not communicating in the body that's not communicating well. And you can see that it can't even pronounce words correctly. By adding the missing material back in there, you can see it goes from, not communicating to being able to say, cleanse me or see me or restore me, defend me or feed me or regulate me. And that's how the body works at a cell level. And that's how it communicates to carry out its needs. As I referred to a minute ago, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, March 23rd, 2001, volume 291, and the entire journal, as seen here, was devoted to what I just said right here. And this cutaway on the surface shows these little blue, looks like marbles attached to the surface of the cell. That's exactly what we're referring to. And they said when cells turn against the body, as in degenerative or autoimmune type functions or dysfunctions, research has shown that sugars are simply missing from their glycoprotein structures. So, when we think about autoimmune, what is being determined today that in some cases it's the body doing the right thing, but attacking the wrong thing. It's miscommunicating and misidentifying a cell as an invader versus a good, healthy cell. And that might, again, sound simple, but cellular communication can be just that. That's simple in the human body. Very complex because of the other areas it has to communicate with. So when we look at macrophage activation, we know that the medium chains actually activate those very large white blood cells that are found in the bone marrow. They regulate all immunomodulating functions of your immune system. They facilitate wound healing and infection control. They serve to detect and eliminate any foreign antigens or microorganisms, viruses and bacteria and things that get into the body. They identify them. They take action to deal with them. And again, your front line of defense. Macrophage is a Greek term that actually means big eater. So when we look at an example of that, again, this cell is trying to communicate and it's been invaded by a bacteria or a virus or a toxin. And this immune cell, as in this diagram, is going to recognize that. It can call in the other phagocytes and the other dendritic cells and things. They can encapsulate this and begin to move it on out of the body. And that's the way the body deals with all this kind of stuff. And so, I know we don't feel all this stuff happening, but it's going on all the time. Here's another example of a cell that didn't regenerate correctly. You know, we've got blood cells regenerating about 8 million a second. We've got bone cells taking 10 to 12 to 14 months. But over the course of, 12 to 14 to 24 months, our bodies begin to completely rebuild themselves at a cell level. But when cells regenerate, if they don't do that correctly and become, regenerated out of control, an aberrant or bad cell, if you will, then the macrophage and the communication has got to recognize that. As in this diagram right here, you can see that this cell in the bottom left-hand corner is, certainly different than the other cells around it, which are healthy cells. They look like they're growing hair, but this abnormal cell does not, referred to as a cancer cell. And of course, the macrophage is designed to recognize that, take action, deal with that. And hopefully, it's working correctly. If it's not, a lot of times you don't know that until you find the lump and you realize it broke down a long time ago and it's just now getting its point to the surface where you begin to realize you got a problem on your hands and you might be fighting for your life. Again, this is not a treatment, cure, mitigation for any type of disease, but an understanding of how the body functions at a cell level. And now this is published again in Science and is well-known fact, and the role that these particular fractions or sugars play in that. So from there, we looked at the long chains, and those are actually, like I said earlier, left in the intestinal tract. They're converted to short chain fatty acids, and they feed that good, healthy bacteria, which is critical to the support of your immune system. Over 70% of your immune function is dependent on your digestive tract and extracting these nutrients correctly. So there is a meta-analysis over 100 peer-reviewed published studies on acemannan. It's certainly available. There's some chapters in this book that would just stop you in your tracks and wonder, why isn't that front page news? And it's, of course, all medical fact. The history of aloe vera, the mechanisms of action, the integrative health support that it provides, and certainly the safety and efficacy. Because one thing that's unique about acemannan, a couple things, let me say this real clear. Acemannan does not fix anything. It supports everything. And thirdly, it does not damage anything. There is no detrimental side effect. In fact, it is compatible to the actual production of things in the human body. In fact, mannose, the main fraction in acemannan, is only found in 2 places at this level on the face of the earth. One of them is, of course, in aloe vera. The other one is in mother's breast milk. Mama actually makes it during the gestational period. It's pumped through the umbilical cord to the fetus for the expression of all genetic activity. It's how the D-nucleic acid and the R-nucleic acid communicate. It's how the baby is built and formed in the womb. And so after 9 months of term and that baby's born, it's actually reversed through the mammary glands. It comes out in the mother's breast milk, which is God's most perfect food for a newborn baby. And we know the differences in babies that are not breastfed over the years, even, not just when they're babies. So again, it can't be duplicated and put into formulas. So that is something, again, it's fact. It's all there. In fact, every bit of this is now published in the Library of Congress as of 2012. I mentioned a little bit earlier that as of 2022 will be into every area of science curriculum and required to be knowledgeable about and tested as people begin to graduate or even get into upper college to actually attain doctorate or other upper level degrees. So it will begin in high school. And so that is where this technology began. It's where it's come to at the time about 10, now 11 years ago. And overall in the last 8 to 9 years, it has blossomed tremendously. And I can only imagine what's going to happen over the next 7 to 10 years as people really find out about the benefits of this to the point where, again, we can see the impact that we know it can make. So I can continue on, but the reality is everything that we're talking about tonight here, this particular immune produced by Dr. Santiago Rodriguez is the leading stabilized level of acemannan that can be found in the world today. And seen as the world's leading expert in stabilized aloe, Dr. Rodriguez was in the labs back in the early 80s when acemannan was first discovered by Dr. Bill McAnally. Dr. Rodriguez was actually the gentleman who was able to develop the technology to extract it and stabilize it, because acemannan is a labile molecule, fancy term. It just means that within 2 to 4 hours after picking that aloe vera, there's an enzyme that was released in the plant that will actually digest that polysaccharide, and the plant will certainly be non-effective. So he was able to take that, extract it, and suspend it where it actually could go into science and into a product where it could be utilized at a later time. And that's where it began in 1985. It went through traditional drug trials at any level. They could find no level of toxicity. They could not find any level of drug interaction known as P450 activity, which actually said that there was no interaction with not only pharmaceutical and over-the-counter medications, but other supplements, herbal supplements, etc. In fact, it was so compatible with human physiology that the body actually recognized it above anything else. To some degree, at that point, it was deemed a food component and put out on the shelf and sat for over 9 years until it fell into the hands of Mr. Sam Castor, who to date is now the Chief Executive Officer of the Hope Movement, Alivea, and entirely the man behind, he and his wife behind Manna Relief Ministries, who began to serve these children years ago. Dr. Rodriguez gave us the 5th generation of this technology that is 4.5 times more potent in macrophage activating ace-mannan. It's literally over 5.6 times more potent per gram at about half the price than what was developed almost 35 years ago, and was gifted to this movement simply because we serve children. So I can go on and on about that, but you know, Alivea AE is that state-of-the-art aloe vera interleaf gel powder we talk about with the most immune activating fractions of ace-mannan that can be found available. So that we know for a fact, and it was given strictly to this movement. We're the only ones that have it. It's integrated into every single product that this movement has. Now, by the way, we're not a Me Too movement. We don't have a huge array of products. We have specific products for specific purposes. Tonight, I want to touch on basically 4 key products that support the main 5 areas of human physiology. That, along with good filtered water, and oh, don't forget to breathe, we believe is a good daily intake of the best food components your body's craving. So when I talk about Alivea AE and ace-mannan, that's found in a product called Immune. Now, before I get started here, Immune, our Alivea products are not designed to treat, cure, mitigate any type of disease, dysfunction, or anything. They're not here to take the place of a doctor's care and advice. They are simply here to support the, the human body in working the way God designed it. As your automobile needs oil, air, water, gas, and brake fluid to support the basic functions so it can operate going down the road, your human body needs certain areas of communication, defense, regulation, nutrition, and digestion to assist it in performing on a daily basis also. So number 1, of course, is Immune. It supports communication. We know that it enhances macrophage activation as much as 10-fold. It actually increases stem cell production in the bone marrow as much as 300 to 400%. Just imagine that. You know, supports the antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial defenses of the body. It balances or a sluggish or overactive immune system. See, it doesn't boost, nor does it suppress. It modulates, allowing the body to do what it needs to do, go up or down. So it doesn't do anything at all in that allows the body to do what it's designed to do. It also speeds up wound healing as much as 35%. Well, who didn't know that about aloe vera? It aids in absorption of nutrients and water in the GI tract. It supports a healthy gut, cognitive function, and of course, vascular flow. So it is the basis of function in the body in every single area, whether you drop a brick on your toe or you've got something going on in your body you don't know about. It's how the body recognizes it and carries out normal human physiology to deal with it. It's like the wiring in your house. It gets the power where it needs to be. So from there, we look at a product called Celebrate, which is a very potent defense product, which is designed to protect the body at the cell level. It's also seen as our flagship product, as a product that if people say, well, I can just get started with one product, well, that would be Celebrate. Because Celebrate has a measurable amount of Alivea AE in this ace-mannan powder. It has a measurable amount in each capsule. It also has a unique formula called the Prolane or a Betadine that was discovered in beets. The bad thing about beets is over 70% by volume is sugar, but Prolane, being a unique proprietary formula gifted to this movement, again, because we serve children, is a very unique extract of that pure Betadine that has 0 sugar. a very natural anti-inflammatory. So when you look at Original, it's a very potent, what is known as a pine bark extract, a very potent form of antioxidant. You know, with oxidative stress and things of that nature, it begins to build up damage on each of our cells, and especially in the cardiovascular system. So, you know, combining all these together is a very powerful defense system product, not to mention Manuka honey. And many people are aware of Manuka honey and the value of honey in general as a very potent antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal type of product. Well, Manuka honey is light years beyond any of the honeys that we see out here on the market. And science has now proven that. So we combine that to a very unique chewable formula that is tasty, that people can just munch on throughout the day. And for a lot of people, that's a measurable amount of each of our key ingredients for immune and defense system in the body to give people what I call a fighting chance. And for healthy people, that's a good place to start. Those that have some measure of health challenge that feel they need more can certainly add more immune to that, in addition to a product called Limitless, which is more of that pure proline or Balan that I just referred to. And that's available if you'd like to know more about that. From there, we look at the body's ability to balance or regulate itself at a cell level. That's also known as the endocrine system. You've got over 87 hormones, 17 of which are sexual and reproductive. The other 70 control so many areas of function. Too much of a particular hormone and actually you're beginning to damage cells. Not enough, and they just don't function correctly. And we know the damaging effects of hormonal additives, but we know that balance, this very active ingredient referred to as dioxygenin, it's hard to pronounce, is an active ingredient, again, gifted to this movement, a very high level stabilized formula that allows our body to have the raw food components to activate and balance hormone activity upon demand. And it has many other factors formulated that are very, very incredible. And that being said, we call it our mad, sad, happy, glad pill. So balance, I mean, a day without balance is like a day without sunshine. For many people, you know, the celebrating the balance. And our next product, Daily, is the best regimen for people that consider themselves healthy. And our next product is a product called Daily, which supports the area of nutrition and digestion. You know, nourishment, which is also referred to as the parts that our body uses to build good, healthy cells. You need calcium for the bones, potassium, magnesium for the heart. You know, so you've got these other factors that the body uses to rebuild healthy cells, vitamins, minerals, and trace elements. But in addition, you've got to have the good active live bacteria and acid activated forms of enzymes for our body to break these food components down and make them available at the cell level. So a lot of times that comes in a couple or more products, but with Daily, you've got a combination of not only the food-based matrix form of vitamins, minerals, and trace elements that are actually put back into that food matrix through a re-fermentation process like your gut does. In addition, encapsulated bacteria within the capsules that actually is released in the gut that allow your body to start to have more good, healthy bacteria on a daily basis that you normally lose on a regular basis. That, along with acid activated forms of enzymes put back in your digestive tract, really what in some cases, a lot of this dead food that we see today on the market just is not making available. So that is the uniqueness of Daily. So I look at immune, celebrate, balance, and Daily, covering communication, defense, regulation, nutrition, and digestion. You know, in addition to that, I always say drink lots of good filtered water and don't forget to breathe. And those are actually the 7 areas of human physiology, I believe, that are critical. And number 7, of course, being good exercise and good oxygen, good air. So, you know, that being said, I think there is an 8th ingredient, and that 8th ingredient is something called hope. And, you know, when we reach out and give somebody hope, because, you know, when hope is missing, is when people take that last move. They take that drastic move. And, you know, that's not where we want people to end up. And so what we do as Alavea is we have something, again, called the Hope Movement. We reach out to people everywhere. In fact, we call it helping out people everywhere, hope. So when you look at this, it can be as easily as giving somebody something we call a hope pop. You know, a simple sucker that defies wisdom when we talk about a healthy product. You know, each hope pop has the equivalent of amount of ACE mannan that even our Celebrate per tablet has. 50 milligrams. And when we look at the recommended daily allowance of vitamin C, 4 grams of good healthy fiber, not to mention sweetened with xylitol, a dental friendly type of product, and they taste incredibly good. And so just by telling somebody, here, you want a sucker? And the things that are in that sucker is what we give to children in orphanages around the world and have for over 20 years, that it has made an incredible difference. And I'd like to talk to you about this. And so that's how simple it can be to reach out and give somebody a little bit of hope. And that's what we do in the Hope Movement. And simply by providing you with the very best that science has to offer on a regular basis, and helping you change your life, you in turn turn around and help us change the world. So that's who we are as a company. That's who we are as a movement. And all we ask is be a part of it. Join us. Marlene, I know you're here with me. Reach out to you just a second if you're still there.
Yes, Jeff, thank you. Hopefully it won't be too noisy. We are driving in a driving rain. But you mentioned those areas of good health, what provides for good health. And if I may, I would like to add to that, and that is this: gratitude. And I say gratitude because I believe it's important in everything. And I know for me, where I was 4 years ago was not good, and I was looking at some not good things. But today I have gratitude that I'm no longer looking at those things. And so I just would like to add that to it. And Jeff, thank you so much for your words tonight that are very important for everyone to hear. And maybe someone has some questions.
I know the chat line is open, and you're welcome if you have any questions to type something in there. A lot of times it's hard to watch that and other things at the same time. But I know in the bottom or the top right-hand corner, you should be able to unmute your phone, or in the bottom left of your screen, if you had like to speak up and maybe share something. And don't be shy. And I know sometimes it gets a little confusing if a lot of people start at once, but it's always nice to have somebody start. If anybody has something you'd like to share, now would be a great time.
Yeah, Jeff, just want to mention about the products, general, that one of the things that struck me with the first meeting with Sam Castor in Warrensburg here, Missouri, there's no LD50. There's no toxicity in these products. It's not a drug. It's not a prescription, and it's safe. And you can take as much Ace Man in it as you can. I understand that your wife had taken multiple amounts in a day.
Yes, sir. Tremendous amount. And myself, considering myself healthy,
Yeah.
I take a lot also.
Yeah. Another thing I had noticed, the drug from before I came to Missouri and New York, I saw a lady with a gangrene of her foot. And when Carrington Labs had the product, it was a topical, and the surgeon used this. I thought that she was going to have lose her foot the next day. She had 3/4 of the foot with gangrene. After 2 months, she came back to me, and the foot was completely cleared of gangrene. They used this Ace Mannin topical and a gel and a number of other products from the same company, and the gangrene was completely gone. That's what really motivated me to become part of this.
That's awesome, Dr. Applegate. And I really appreciate you sharing that. I know that that was even before our time. And this went into the veterinary medicine and wound care. And that gel was created and made available to the burns industry in mid upper 80s, should I say, and into the early 90s. And so, and Carrington Labs was ultimately, they went bankrupt only because they had no experience at marketing a food-based supplement, and they were in the pharmaceutical business. And but Dr. Santiago Rodriguez continued research. And today he is, again, as I mentioned earlier, seen as the world's foremost expert. He produces products for our veterinarian industry, an adjunct that is actually used in the poultry industry that eradicated a T-cell lymphoma referred to as Marek's disease. And so there's many components that have been used in that arena, which is certainly not available through human drug trials for many reasons in our laws. But course, during the time of veterinarian medicine, and today is also between the USDA. So a little more liberal in that sense, and they begin to see such an impact. And good point to make right there. I had a gentleman friend of mine in the late 80s who knew a veterinarian, and he, as an individual, a human, was dealing with some severe degenerative disorders. And the veterinarian asked him, if he'd ever heard about it. And just because they were friends of his brother, gave him what they were giving to animals at the time. And his brother was dramatically impacted, is how I can best put that. And so that being said, the stories were starting to pop in the beginning, even before this hit the market. And that's a great story to tell, Doctor, simply because you just were lightly touched back then. And I'm so grateful you're here and what you do right now to help people understand the value, certainly as a person of your position. So thank you.
Well, thanks for what you're doing, Jeff. Appreciate it, and hope to see you in Dallas.
Yes, sir. And that being said, let's touch on that a minute. Roughly 22 years almost now ago, I was told if I didn't believe it, go to Dallas. And I'm asking all of you and basically telling you the same thing. I always tell people time to suit up and show up, because this in particular event is the one not to miss. We actually introduced Alivea, launched the entire company in the beginning of May 2020. Need I say more? And we had a huge event planned to introduce everything. And so like everything else in the world, I think, got put on hold. And so that is come off hold. And next weekend will be that splash we've all waited for. We're expecting a large attendance. All social distancing and protection methods are in place for those that have that level of concern. I know a lot of people have, and rightfully so. Just know that we're being very respectful, all of that, and certainly not arrogant or blatant to the fact that there are many concerns there. So, but we encourage you to be there, to really experience what's going to take place. I've had people say, well, let me know what happens. And best I can tell you is that ain't going to happen, because we can't let you know what's going to happen. You just have to be there for yourself. Sometimes, there's a lot that will happen from stage, but I'll promise you, your most impactful event will be something that happens in the hallway when you meet up with somebody and they share something with you just had never expected. And that right there can be the turning point in everything that's in my life. When I heard Dr. Rob Ortman from the NIH talk, I knew this. I was going to take this to the world. And I walked out there and I could almost tell you today the design of the carpet I was standing on. But I knew that moment, that time, that place, that God had moved in my life. And I think that's the time and place that he may make that move in many more people's lives. And that's going to be next weekend for the splash of the very first public benefits social business 3.0 platform in existence.
Jeff,
Yes.
we have some questions that have come up in the chat. If you don't mind answering some questions now.
Throw them at me.
Okay, so Deb, I think, wants to know where the aloe is grown. If you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Ben, that's a great question. And I've heard a lot of rumors floating around on all kinds of levels. But, first of all, aloe has to be seasonal and to make sure it's at the right harvest time. And so there's multiple sources in every part of the world. In fact, the most notable are Costa Rica, which are the biggest sources that we use today. Some of the original sources that we had seen over 20 some years ago being used. And there's also a very high grade form of soil and location on an island off the coast of China, not produced by the Chinese, but in fact, a location that Dr. Rodriguez actually owns and controls, of where he grows another course of aloes, simply because of seasonal. There was a typhoon that actually hit and destroyed a big part of that. So he had his other areas to lean on. So there's got to be multiple sources for dependability and correct harvesting. And it also has to reach certain grades. There was a story told many, many years ago about a company of destiny that would be given a provision at a time when, there would be a great need, a Joseph company, if you will. But on that tape, Sam described a story about a short gentleman that was picked up by a UPS driver that was let off at a lab where Dr. McAnally and Dr. Rodriguez and a few other were looking at how to break the identity of the particular sugar fractions. And that very unique individual happened to have a degree in carbohydrate structuring from Oxford, and purely by accidental was dropped off because where he was applying for a job was closed that morning. Again, divine intervention. Why am I giving this long story? That very individual right there is at the door of our manufacturing facility that tests every batch of aloe coming in to detective DNA on that analysis to determine that it is of the very grade that we require that has been committed to this movement. So, and so no matter where it is sourced at different times, it is all checked, double checked as it comes in the door, just to give a little more there. And the unique formula is that so far, we don't have a problem with any batches being sent back. So, and each formula, each particular ingredient, from the proline, the betalain to the dioxygen, each component through raw material source is checked in the same exact manner. Any other questions?
Using the acemannan molecule as we have it, and how that is superior to using aloe vera right from the fresh leaf?
Well, there's a real good question. The easy answer is, have you tasted it lately? The anthraquinones that are there in the fresh aloe is almost so bitter that you can't hardly swallow it. In addition, they actually make laxatives out of that. So it is, how do I put that? It can be very active. And so it can be a moving experience, I heard one doctor say. So we know what it does topically, and you get that little tingle and burn from it, but you don't put up with the internal activity that comes from fresh gel. Now, that being said, in order to process it, there's a very unique formula to extract it that has to kill off those anthraquinones. In the beginning, they actually used solvent bases, and there were certain solvents that they actually used, chemical-based solvents, and then it would break down and kill off the anthraquinones, and they could extract the pure, fresh gel, which in fact, they had to then extract all the solvents, but it still left the powdered gel when it dried up in the freeze drying process, almost to smell like chemicals. It also caused it to clump up when you mixed it in water. And that was done with solvent based. And so they had to do something. And the second level, they looked at charcoal filtration, but actually that robs of the very key components that are necessary for immune function. So through this unique water filtration, we have nothing lost, but we're able to still get out all of the anthraquinones. In fact, this acemannan is so pure that when you open a capsule up and pour it in water, it literally disappears, except for a very slight cloudy nature of the sunflower lecithin, which is used as an emulsifier because it helps it break down better in fat soluble areas of the body, such as past the blood-brain barrier, etc. So that is the level on that level of acemannan versus original. But somebody's got to kill off that bad part of the aloe, if you will, or you just couldn't hardly consume it. We also know this, that on the other lesser quality formulas, where the belief is that the larger fractions are better for you by taking massive amounts, just starting on that product, again, gives you that moving experience. And a lot of people experience a lot of digestive activity because of that. And it's not as bitter, but it does have that same laxative type effect. With anthraquinones and all the impurities gone, then you get that pure immune effect and none of the side effects side of it. So great question, absolutely. And I will warn you this, if you open a capsule of immune and pour it on your tongue, you will not like the taste of it. So it is just as bad as that fresh aloe, but it won't leave you on a run, if I can say that politely.
Thank you, Jeff. Another question that Gretchen had And I'm assuming she means generally, but let me just, and Gretchen, you can unmute yourself certainly if you need to clarify, but she said, can you speak about the ingredients of the products themselves? And I know, Jeff, that you talked about the betalins and the proline and ace mannan and so forth. So I'm assuming she's meaning quality. Is that right, Gretchen? Do you want to comment on that?
Hi there. Yeah, I was just wondering, in addition to, like, are there any natural flavors? What is the capsule made of? Any inactive ingredients that we should be aware of?
Gretchen, I'm glad you asked that. I know that we use everything gluten-free, no GMO. There are no synthetics. Let me say that slow. There are no synthetics. I know that there's a little level of ascorbic acid that is used in our Hope Pop as a preservative. And through that natural base that it's in, it allows it to reactivate, so it can have a level of vitamin C, even according to RDA. But ascorbic acid is technically a synthetic ingredient of vitamin C. It's the only area that you'll find that in there. And the reason, again, is the preservative for the sucker in a natural way. So in essence, across the board, you'll find zero synthetics. You can read the labels and see that. Again, no GMO, no gluten-free, certainly. And in fact, our shakes are even classified vegan because we have no animal byproducts in the things that we do, unless it's something related to a particular capsule or the gel cap or something. But across the board, the answer is no. There's a mistake on the ingredient form on our shakes. It says folic acid. That's a synthetic. It's a mistake. It should say folate. When the manufacturer is making the boxes, they might have gotten them changed by now. But I saw that as a typo error. But no, that's a rule we stand on.
Jeff, can I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am, Shalene.
Yeah, so today I ended up at the dentist not by choice. And I hadn't had a chance to get there to follow up, but I took in a bag of the Hope Pops with me. And my dentist is a really nice young gal. And so when I went to leave, and she says, is there anything else I can do for you? And I said, absolutely. Reached in my purse and I took out a whole bag of Hope Pops. And I says, I want you to try these and I want you to call me when you're ready to get more. I just assumed she was going to want more. She took that bag and she looked at it and she goes, I'm going to like these. They have xylitol in them, don't they? I said, absolutely. She ripped open that bag, took a Hope Pop and tasted it. And she goes, these are delicious. So I know I'll be hearing from her with the Hope Pops, but that's one way. I just did the assumption, call me when you're ready for more. And so I know I'll hear from her in the next week or so. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Perfect. Shalene, it defies wisdom. It's like, really? These are healthy? Trouble is, we've been have trouble getting people to share them. They realize how good they are and they won't tell anybody. They keep them to themselves. And well, there's more where they came from. So don't worry.
Well, I thought about, do I take the whole bag or do I just give her a few? But no, I said, that's a good treat to give to anybody that gets up out of that chair. I don't care what age they are. And she goes, you are absolutely correct. So I really feel that, just to be, and she's fun and she likes jokes. So I really think she'll, now that I'm older, but even, I don't care if it's a 75-year-old patient or a 5-year-old patient, she can whip one out of the drawer and say, you are really good today. Here's your treat. It's just something fun that she can hand out.
That is so true, and feel good about handing out too. And
Exactly.
Mamas will want their kids to have one. And, what a great product to have your kids, running to you every few hours and wanting another sucker. There's nothing in it that'll hinder them. Although I would recommend they don't necessarily suck on them as they go to sleep. We know it's just not something good at bedtime. There's no legal reason or no warning to that effect, but they're just great products and kids love them. And that being said, we had a lady actually in Australia that products were, coming together, and that whole country is exploding down there. But the reality is it took them a substantial amount of time to get their first orders. And one of the first orders that began to hit were the Hope Pops. And so she was able to get started with just some Hope Pops. And she had a couple of the Hope Pops over the course of a few hours. And she has been dealing with a severe neurological related issue for numbers of years and had been on Fair Nutrition, trying to make somewhat of a difference. And I was so surprised at what she shared after just 2 Hope Pops. And, we hope that she'll share more of that story. But I think it's amazing what a little bit can do for people, and a little bit of the right stuff, should I say. When they talk about the most important ingredient, it's always the one that's missing. Many people looked at good nutrition. I've heard of everything from the super juices to the super this or super that, you name it. But the reality is, when we talk about mannose, it's something very unique in human physiology. There is nothing that plays that role, period. And once that is able to function correctly, everything else begins to come into play. Ace Mannan seems to be a catalyst enhancing every product that it is put into, making it more effective, to the point that even less is sometimes necessary to get the same effect. So it's amazing the impact that it can make. Over the last 22 years that I've known of Ace Mannan and looked for every level of warning that could have been possibly put out concerning it, I've only found one, if you want to refer to this as a warning. And that one and only warning I've ever found from a validated scientific source was simply this: the needs for medications could be reduced. Please work with your medical professionals. So, a lot of times that's our goal, is to get off of medications. We don't want to take drugs. We know they don't restore health. They maintain our way of being as we can get through the process. Hopefully our bodies will heal itself. Well, when you begin to support the body and its ability to do that, as it begins to improve, certainly the common sense says, I probably might not need as much of this. And always, of course, work with your doctor. That's something that is some area that we don't ever touch. If there's no other comments, we've gone a good hour here. I love sharing this. I could be here till midnight or after, but the line is open if anybody has a last quick comment, question, or et cetera that is necessary. If not,
See everybody in Dallas.
absolutely.
Thanks, Jeff.
Phenomenal.
See you.
Thank you, Doc.
We'll try to get this recording up as soon as.
Yes, ma'am, Marlene. Good night, everybody. And as always, may God bless all.
And
Thank you, Marlene.
yes, you're welcome.
Good night, everyone. See you in Dallas.
Good.
Good night.
Make
Bye.
it.